Hi, welcome to this video on Java operators. This is the part 1 of the 2 videos we have on the same topic. In this video we'll start with expressions, terms and operators. Then we'll have a look at arithmetic operators. Then how division is performed differently. Then we'll have a look at this new operator called the remainder operator. And then we'll have a look at precedence of operators on how some operators are evaluated before and some are evaluated after, and then we'll have a look at two unary operators called increment and decrement operators. From the previous video, try to recall that we studied about variables. So integer sum is equals to num1 plus num2, where num1 and num2 are variables, or you can call them as terms. Now on a whole, this is an expression on the right hand side, and this consists of terms and one operator, this. Now plus is an operator. What plus is doing is it is adding two terms. So operators are special symbols and they perform operations. These operations are performed on operands. Now in our example, num1 and num2 are two operands, and the plus operator is basically adding the values of num1 and num2, and on a whole this becomes an expression of two terms and one operator, and the final sum is being stored in the variable sum. So these are the operators are special symbols and these perform operations. Now operators like plus, minus, multiplication, division, and this percentage operator, which is called remainder operator, we'll have a look at it later, performs mathematical operations or arithmetic operations. We'll now proceed on to arithmetic operators. Now as we saw in the previous slide, these operators are arithmetic operators. Plus performs addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, and finally the remainder operator. Now of all these, just ignore the spelling mistake, I'll rewrite it. Of all these, we know about addition. Suppose there are two terms, 3 plus 4. So, and we assign this expression to the variable a. So this operator is basically adding these two terms, or this operator minus operator is subtracting the two terms, and so on, the multiplication. The only part to know is that this works differently. And what is the remainder operator? Now apart from integers, these operators can also be applied to real value numbers. For example, we can have 3.3 into 5.2, and using the multiplication operator symbol, and we can store this in B. So basically arithmetic operators perform mathematical operations, and there are like 5 of these operators. Now as I talked about, that the division operator works differently. The problem with it is that when you divide two integers, integer division happens. Suppose you divide 9 by 4. Now 9 is an integer and 4 is an integer. So when you divide two integers, integer division happens and you get an integer no matter what. So if your result is 2.25, by dividing these two, you will only get the integer 2. The decimal part will be removed and only the integer part will be given back. So if you have, say, 5 divided by 2, in that case also the answer is 2.5, but you will only get 2. and it is not rounded off. The decimal part is removed. So integer division happens when you basically divide two integers. But if you want to get the real value answer, you need to specify either of the value as double. Now the double value for 2 is 2.0. Now if you do the same, 9 divided by 2.0, 2 is a real value. If either of the value is double, then it will return a double value. So in this case integer division will not happen. In this case proper division will happen and it will return 2.25. So this is one thing you should remember properly, that division works a bit differently, and when you divide two integers you always get an integer back. An integer division happens. So you need to specify either of the values as double for the real value division to happen. Now out of the 5 arithmetic operators we saw, the only new operator was the remainder operator, which has a percentage symbol. How does that work? We all perform division in our junior school. So when we divide 16 by 7, we get a remainder of 2. So this remainder operator works exactly that way. It divides the first operand by the second and returns the remainder. So when you have 16% 7, it will return the remainder of 16 divided by 7. So 16 divided by 7, the remainder is 2. And suppose, or you can have anything else, you can have 5% 2. So the remainder in this case is 1. Then you can have 7% 30. That is 7 divided by 30. 30 zeros are 30. So which will be 0 only. So the remainder here is 7. So the remainder here will be 7 only, because 7 is basically smaller than 30 and it is not possible. So it will basically, the remainder will be 7. So the remainder operator, what it does when you have a and b, it divides a by b, the first operand by the second operand, and returns the remainder. Now when we have an expression, we should remember that certain operators have a precedence over the other operators. And let us understand how this works. The parentheses have the maximum precedence. So if you have parentheses in an operation, in an expression, that will be calculated first. Then comes multiplication, division and remainder operator, which have the same level of precedence. And in the end you have addition and subtraction operator, plus and minus, which have the same level of precedence. So we start from the top. Then when we have multiple operators of the same precedence, we evaluate from left to right. So this is very important. When we have multiple operators from the same precedence, we evaluate from left to right. Then we go to the bottom and go to the next operators. Suppose we have this expression. I'll write this expression above. 2 plus 6 into 3 divided by 4. X is equals to. Now we don't have a parenthesis here or brackets here, so we'll move on to the next level. Multiplication, division, remainder operator have the same level of precedence. And when we have both multiplication and division operators. Now since we have both multiplication and division operators, we will evaluate from left to right. So multiplication comes first. So 6 into 3 is 18. So now we'll have 6 plus 18 divided by 4. Next comes the division operator. So we'll do 2 plus 18 divided by 4. Now 18 divided by 4 is 4.5. But the problem is that this is an integer division. So it will only return the integer value. So this will only return the integer value, and it will basically evaluate it to as just 4. So 18 divided by 4 as basically both, and we saw in previously how division is performed differently, as both are integers. 18 divided by 4 will return an integer, so your value will be 4 instead of a real number value, which is 4.5. So now 2 plus 4 and the answer will be 6 to the same. So we saw precedence of operators, that this operator has the highest precedence, then we move on to multiplication, division and remainder, and at last we have addition and subtraction. Now we saw previously then that when we do int x is equals to 5, x variable is given the value 5. And when we do x is equals to x plus 1, then right hand side is evaluated first, and x plus 1 is 6. So now the value of 6 is assigned to x. But there is a shorter way of doing the same. X is equals to x plus 1 can also be written as x plus plus. So plus plus is the increment operator, and when you have x plus plus, it basically increments the value of x by 1. So instead of writing x is equals to x plus 1, you can just write x plus plus. And similarly, instead of writing x is equals to x minus 1, you can just write x minus minus. Whereas minus minus is the decrement operator. So you have the increment operator plus plus and the decrement operator minus minus, and these are unary operators because these act on one operand. Only on x this is acting. Previously we saw binary operators and they required two operands, but x minus minus and plus plus are acting on only one operand, and that's why these are unary operators. And plus plus is the increment and minus minus is the decrement operator. Finally, it is time to summarize what we have learned so far. Operators are special symbols that perform operations on operands. Arithmetic operators, as we saw, are used to perform mathematical operations. Remainder operator returns the remainder when you divide the first operand by second. And increment decrement operators are unary operators to increase and decrease the value of a variable by 1. Also, we saw that division works differently, and when you have two integers performing a division, then you'll have integer division taking place. So it is necessary to have one of the variables, one of the operands as a real valued number.